أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. So we continue with our discussions which we have been having, where we were exploring and discussing that those areas which require and those aspects which require further research. Okay, so we've discussed those few areas. Inshallah, today we discuss another of those areas which we feel seriously requires academic and scholarly research in this area, and that is the issue of investigating, rather I would say reassessing and reevaluating the Mazar literature. Okay, by Mazar literature I mean the Ziyarah literature, especially the book Kamil al-Ziyarat. Okay, now I'll come and mention why do I say especially Kamil al-Ziyarat. Okay, so this is what I feel we really require a scholarly and academic research in this area. Okay, now before I get into today's discussion, one or two quick points which I would like to make before we enter our discussion. Point number one, you see, one thing which separates us from our fellow Muslim brothers is the whole issue of dua and ziyarah. Okay, so the rich literature of dua which we have as Shias, other sects don't have that literature. Okay, together with that we have also the literature of ziyarat, okay, which we call the Mazar literature. Now, with any literature, okay, take hadith for example, hadith which is the sunnah of the Prophet and the Imams alayhimus salam, that also got interpolated, they get fabricated, a lot of wrong things penetrate in within these books. Okay, so similar to hadith also we have the Mazar literature which also has been penetrated by wrong things. Okay, so wrong things have been penetrated. There is a need to be able to purge and cleanse these books rather, and that's why I'm saying there's a need for further research in this area. Okay, so this was point number one. Point number two, again, this is a very unfortunate thing, but I need to make this very clear. See, we as Shia Imamiyya, the Shia scholars, apart from the Akhbari scholars, okay, we leave the Akhbari scholars. Excuse me. The Akhbari scholars have sanctified hadith and given a lot of sacredness to hadith, okay, to the level that they consider all books of hadith to be authentic, especially the four canonical books. They consider all the books reliable and all the hadith authentic. Okay, so we're not talking about the Akhbari scholars, rather I'm talking of the usuli minded scholars and those who are with that mindset. We in theory we always say that no book of hadith is above criticism apart from the Quran. No book of hadith is above criticism. Every book of hadith can be criticized. Okay, now even if you go in the Sunni world also, they give sanctity and they glorify and they sanctify the two books at least. Okay, the Sahihain, Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, they glorify and sanctify it. You can't criticize those two books. Anybody who criticizes those two books is basically either accused or labeled or ostracized or even imprisoned at times. Okay, and there are those who have even received death threats because of criticizing the Sahihain. Okay, so we unfortunately at times, those who call themselves usuli also act like our fellow Muslim brothers as Sunnis or the Akhbaris. Okay, we also give sanctity and give sacredness to some books, even though in theory we say no, we don't give any sanctity and sacredness to any book, and they are not above criticism. Okay, but when it comes to practice, we don't see that. Inshallah, in the subsequent discussions, I'll even give the example of Biharul Anwar. Scholars of high caliber, when they went to criticize Allama Majlisi and Biharul Anwar, they even faced backlash. Okay, these examples which I will give as we go further in subsequent discussions. One of those books, which again, we are told that in theory you could criticize it, but when it comes to practice, you can't criticize this book, is the book of Kamil al-Ziyarat. And that is why I'm saying there's a real need for further research in this area, okay? There's a serious need and a scholarly research is needed. So you will see it goes to that extent that whenever you go question, I'm not saying we question without any academic that thing. No, we question academically some issues. And quickly Kamil al-Ziyarat will be referenced. It's like, see, it's there in Kamil al-Ziyarat. And it's as if whatever is written in Kamil al-Ziyarat is the right thing. Okay? As we go further, we will say no. Research is required, as even we will see Ayatollah Sistani's opinion on this issue. Okay? So these were 2 points which I felt I needed to clarify before I get into the discussion of today. So I'd like to discuss, so we said we're discussing the whole issue of the Mazar literature, the Ziyarah literature, especially Kamil al-Ziyarat, okay? So I'll be discussing 5 points. The first point is in regards to the Mazar and the Ziyarah literature in general, and why am I calling for research in this area. And then the next 4 points will be including discussion on Kamil al-Ziyarat, okay? So the first point, there's a huge, we can have discussion and lectures over lectures on this issue of the Ziyarah literature, okay? I'm sufficing to this 1 point only. What we're calling for is that point number 1. So we are calling for a need, we are calling for research and rather re-evaluation of the whole Ziyarah literature. I want to give one simple example, okay? There's a beautiful article in Persian. For those of you who read Persian, it's called Manba Yabi wa Sayr Tatawwur Matni wa Sanadiye Ziyarat Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. So these two authors, what they've done is they've done Manba Yabi. So they're actually checking the sources of the ziyarats, number 1, and they're checking the evolution of these ziyarat literature. Okay, this is an important point, something we even discussed in our Karbala narrative series also, that how narratives evolve. Something similar we are seeing even in the Ziyarah and the Mazar literature. So they are only giving an example of Ziyarah of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Okay, this is something to keep in mind. Only the Ziyarah of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Look at how it evolves. And this is a question then which quickly comes to mind, is that if you have such an evolution in the number of ziyarats, okay, then what's the source of all these ziyarats coming up with time? Okay, so let's start. So the article starts with Shk Kulaini all the way to Shk Kulaini from Al-Kafi, okay? He is early 4th century, 329 Hijrah. In his Kafi, he quotes 2 ziyarats of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Let's keep these numbers very much in mind, yeah? 2 ziyarats of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So now, I'm not getting into the discussion of sanad and all. These authors have they've discussed also the sanad and all whatnot. A lot of it you will notice that they're sanadless, they're chainless, they're sometimes disconnected chains, sometimes sources are unknown also, okay? And that is why there's a need for research in this in this area, okay? So Shk Kulaini quotes 2 ziyaras, okay? After him, come to Ibn Qawlaway. Ibn Qawlaway, the author of Kamil al-Ziyarat. Okay, as we go further, we will discuss Kamil al-Ziyarat. We'll come to the discussion. He is mid 4th century. He passes away 367 Hijrah. He quotes 3 riwayats, 3 ziyaras of Imam Ali alayhi salam. One of them is Ziyaratul Wida. Okay, the ziyarah of farewell. This is mid 4th century. Okay, after that we come to the book of Al-Mazar of Sheikh Mufid. Okay, Sheikh Mufid was also inspired and very much affected by Ibn Qawlaway's Kamil al-Ziyarat. Okay, so he in his Al-Mazar quotes two ziyarahs, one normal ziyarah and one ziyaratul wida. Okay, the farewell ziyarah. This is early 5th century, 410 Hijrah, 413 Hijrah, sorry. After that, you come to Sheikh Tusi. Sheikh Tusi is now mid 5th century, 460 Hijrah. In his Misbah al-Mutahajjid, he quotes two ziyarahs. Okay, so we are seeing the number is 2 and 3. Again, leaving aside the chains and all whatnot. But the 2 or 3 ziyarahs being narrated in this period. Okay. Sheikh Tusi in his Tahdhib al-Ahkam, okay, this is mid 5th century, now he quotes 4 ziyarahs. Okay, 3 normal ziyarahs and 1 ziyaratul wida. Okay, so we now have 4 ziyarah. In a span of a century, we have 1 more ziyarah, which is 1 or 2 more ziyarah, which is increasing. Okay, the interesting part is here now. This is now Ibn Mashhadi. Ibn Mashhadi in his Mazar al-Kabir. Okay, we have discussed him in the Karbala narrative when we were discussing Ziyarat Nahiya. We discussed this author. He is end of 6th century and early 7th century. Okay, in his Mazar al-Kabir, interestingly, now he brings 14 narrations now. 1-4. Okay, so now you have extra 13 narrations coming up. The question now comes up, what's the source? And you go see the sources, you see that a lot of disconnected chains, a lot of narrations without sources and all whatnot. Okay, 14 narrations. So we have in a span of what? 329 to 600, almost 250 years. We now have an increase of 10 ziyarats or 11 ziyarats. Okay, this was Ibn Mashhadi. Now, come to the late 8th century. You have Shahid Awwal, who has also a book on Mazar also. He returns back and he quotes 5 ziyarats now. Okay, I'm just trying to, in the end, I want to impress upon you and show you that there's a real need for research in this area. Okay, this was Shahid Awwal. Later than him, so it's Sheikh Kaf'ami, okay, in his Balad al-Amin. He is now in the 10th century, okay? He is early and mid 10th century. He quotes two ziyarahs. So now notice, we have coming back now. Scholars are coming back to the same 2 number which was there earlier. Interesting, now we see when Allama Majlisi comes in. Okay? Allama Majlisi has 2 books. He is now early 12th century. A scholar now from 4th century till early 12th century. See the difference now. In his Tuhfat al-Za'ir, he quotes 12 ziyarats. So something similar to what Ibn Mashhadi had quoted. But in his Bihar al-Anwar, strangely, he narrates 40 narrations. Some might be repetitions, but the question comes in, where is he getting these additional sanads also? Where is he getting all these additional chains also? That's a question which needs to be sorted. What are his sources 12 centuries later? What are his sources? Okay, this is a question. Notice the jump now, all the way from 2 to 40. 38 extra narrations we are now getting in the 12th century. And this is where now we are saying that there's a need for further research in this area. It's because with time you're now seeing just the Mazar literature increasing, okay? And a lot of things are being added in the books. Now, as I'm saying, I am not somebody who is saying that everything is fabricated. No, I'm saying there's a need for scholarly research to come and tell us and show us what is the source of everything. If you don't prove it to us that there's a source for everything, and you just say, because Allama Majlisi said it, Wallahi, Allama Majlisi, we respect him. But you can't, when it comes to academics, when it comes to your religion, you can't base your religion on a personality. Okay? Even Quran condemns that, even Islam condemns that, even riwayats condemn that. Okay? This is point number one. So there's a real need and a scholarly need for research in this area. The second discussion we want to have now is the discussion on Kamil al-Ziyarat. So as I mentioned, this book has become a red line for a lot of issues when it comes to the ziyarah issues, number one. And number two, it's impacted a lot of books later. Okay, so thus this book becomes very important. So, discussion number one in regards to Kamil al-Ziyarat. You see, in Kamil al-Ziyarat, we have an introduction by Ibn Qawlaway. Now, as I go further, I will mention, see, the manuscript of Kamil al-Ziyarat we have today is not Ibn Qawlaway's manuscript and version. Okay? We have a student's version today in our hand. I'll come and mention as we go further. So now there's a discussion. Is this introduction by Ibn Qawlaway, or is this introduction by his student? Do you get me? Okay, now this is something I'll come and discuss as I go further. But let's take it as accepted, as the way a lot of scholars have accepted, that no, this is Ibn Qawlaway's introduction. In his introduction, he writes that all what I've narrated in this book, I have taken it from reliable sources. Okay, so as any muhaddith, okay, now what surprises me is how come Kamil al-Ziyarat, this is another research by itself, that how come Kamil al-Ziyarat got this station of sacredness and the sanctity that no other book got. Because every scholar in the introduction they will write. So you will see even the other books also, when they write, they even remove the chains also. Okay? So you have the book Ihtijaj and you have the book Tuhaf al-Uqul and such books where chains are removed. They will tell you all what we have quoted from is from authentic sources. Even Kafi and them, okay? We have quoted from authentic sources. But nobody comes and tells you that we are going to judge based on Kafi or Tuhaf al-Uqul or Ihtijaj or what, I don't know. Nobody does that, okay? Somehow Kamil al-Ziyarat gets the station and sanctity that now narrators are being authenticated via Kamil al-Ziyarat. Okay? Now, was this an akhbari effect? This is something which needs to be researched by itself, okay? So, when this introduction is written by Ibn Qawlaway, some scholars now come up with opinions now. Okay, what does Ibn Qawlaway mean in his introduction? So we have almost 5 and sub-5 opinions, okay? This is something you can refer to, even Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani's Al-Qabasat fi Ilm al-Rijal. He discusses in length all these opinions, and the sub-opinions. I want to discuss the 3 major opinions, okay? These are the 3 major opinions under which a lot of other opinions fit in, okay? So I'm discussing only these 3 major opinions. Opinion number 1, so this was the earliest opinion of Ayatollah Khoui. And until the end of his life, this is an opinion which he maintained. So even Shk Ali, for example, he also maintained this opinion, that what Ibn Qawlaway meant in his introduction in Kamil al-Ziyarat was that he said that all the narrators in the books are authentic and reliable and trustworthy. Okay, so when he says that I've narrated only from reliable sources, that means all the narrators are reliable and trustworthy. And thus all the narrations also become trustworthy and reliable and authentic. Okay? Probably this is the source, the akhbari source, which has made this whole discussion come up. So this was Ayatollah Khoui's also first opinion, and that is why I say that Today, when you come to hadith also in Rijal studies, you will notice that any narrator who is unknown, who is weak, he will be authenticated using Kamil al-Ziyarat. And this is a question which comes in. How do you use Kamil al-Ziyarat only and not other books? Okay? This is where research is required. This is one opinion. Now, the second opinion is a more popular, is the majority opinion, but the popular opinion has become the first one. This is the paradox we are going through. The Usuli scholars are mainly in the second category and they hold the second opinion. But in practice, the majority opinion out there is the first opinion. Okay? So the second opinion, so the likes of Muhaddith Nouri and Ayatollah Khoi's second opinion, or even Ayatollah Shubairi Zanjani, they hold this opinion. They say what Ibn Qawlaway meant in his introduction was not authenticating all the narrators. Rather, he wanted to only authenticate his immediate teachers and narrators. Okay? So from those whom he immediately narrated from. Okay? So in hadith we called mashayikh. Okay? The sheikhs. Okay? The sheikh who from him he immediately quoted from, that's the one he was authenticating, not all the narrators and not all the ones who he has narrated from. Do you get me? This is the second opinion. Now there are discussions, which again, as I said, Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani critiques all of these opinions. What I'm interested in is in the third opinion. And that is why I'm also saying that there's a real need for research in this area. Ayatollah Sistani has a beautiful, rather an interesting opinion which requires further work to be done. Unfortunately, it's not being accepted because again, you're critiquing a book which has been holding sanctity for ages now. Okay? He comes up and not only says, he says no. What Ibn Qawlaway says, he's not authenticating anybody. He's not authenticating the narrators. He's not also not authenticating his immediate teachers and narrations. No. Rather, what he wanted to do was, when he says I'm quoting from a reliable source, it's like every other muhaddith, okay? When he comes and writes, he says I'm quoting from reliable scholars. Means I found them reliable, and thus I want to give confidence to the reader that, Baba, what I have done is I've tried my best to give you the best. Okay, if I can put it, I'm paraphrasing. Okay, it's giving you the confidence to be able to tell you that this is the book, I've given you everything the best. Does it mean everybody is right in the book? Every narrator is authentic? No. That's for you that's for you to be able to research it later. Okay? So Ayatollah Sistani not only rejects this opinion, both the first two opinions, he rejects them. Okay? Well, the interesting part is here, and this is what I'm interested in. Okay, as we go further, we'll illustrate this point also. He comes and says, no, I'm going a step further by telling you that the content of the book is also problematic. Do you get me? Okay? And you notice that it took almost how many centuries for a scholar to come up and tell you that the content of the book Kamil al-Ziyarat, as we'll go further, we'll see the examples. You will come and see that the strange examples which have come up in this book, strange hadith. How come the scholars were authenticating this book? I don't know. Okay? Now, he is now coming and questioning. He's the first scholar after all these centuries to come and question the content of the book. Okay? Not question the narrators now. He's questioning the content now. He's saying, no, the content of the book needs to be rechecked now. So he has a very brief discussion in his book, Ta'arud al-Adillah. Ta'arud al-Adillah are his discussions which has been transcribed by his students. So he's discussing, this is page number 376. He's discussing the reasons for fabrication in hadith. Notice even the title, okay? Where did these fabrications in hadith come up from? So he gives reasoning. The first reason he gives, and this is where he includes the discussion on Kamil al-Ziyarat, he says, الترغيب إلى الخيرات والترهيب عن الشرور. Okay? One of the one of the reasons which people fabricated hadith were those so-called pious people. Okay? They are the ones who are fabricating hadith. Now, can pious people fabricate? Yes. Why did they fabricate? They wanted to invite people to good and refrain people from straying from wrong, and thus they started making up hadith. Okay? So as we go further, we'll see this. So what Ayatollah Sistani says, as he goes further, he says, and this is an example you will find even in Al-Mawdu'at of Ibn Jawzi also, he quotes these examples also. Okay? This issue is very much discussed in the Sunni literature. Unfortunately, we Shias, we critique the other side, we don't critique ourselves. And this is a problem with the sects, okay? This is the unfortunate part. We condemn the others, we criticize the others, but we don't. It's vice versa everywhere. Sunnis would do the same with us also. So Ayatollah Sistani says that كان من العامة رجال كثيرون. Okay? From the Sunnis, okay, there were many people who were apparently ascetic and pious people, but what? يضعون الحديث لذلك. They would fabricate hadith. Okay, these pious people and pious individuals would fabricate hadith. Okay? Why? Because they would think this is one of the ways of inviting people to do Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar. Okay? So he gives two examples. One example he gives from Hakim of Hakim Mustadrak al-Hakim of Hakim Nishapuri, who is a Sunni scholar, a 4th, 5th century Sunni scholar. Okay? Look at the example. So the Rawi says it was told to Abi Isma. Okay, Abi Isma was apparently somebody who was bringing up all these riwayats. So he was asked, من أين لك أن عكرم أن ابن عباس في فضائل القرآن سورة. Okay, where do you come up with these riwayats of merits of reciting each surah? Okay, you will see this even today when books are written. These riwayats are still there from Ibn Abbas. Okay, from Ibn Abbas you will see that, okay, if you recite this surah you will get this much benefit. If you recite this surah you will get this much benefit. So Abi Isma, who was the only one from the students of Ikrimah, okay, of Ibn Abbas, Ikrimah and Abi Isma, he was the only one who was narrating all these narrations. So he now is being asked that where do you come up with all these narrations from? وَلَيْسَ عِنْدَ أَصْحَابِ إِكْرِمَ هَذَا. Some other students of Ikrimah don't have these narrations. Where are you coming up with? Can you see? This is a very beautiful point in hadith. If you want to find out if there's a fabrication happening or not, one of the indicators is to see this. So if a teacher has 10 students, okay, 9 students narrate one thing and 10th narrates another thing, you have to come and question that where did this person get this hadith from? Okay? And that's where you start now identifying the problems in hadith. Okay? So now he then mentions it very clearly. He says, oh, you know what? إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ النَّاسِ قَدْ أَعْرَضُوا عَنِ الْقُرْآنِ. This is a similar issue we are facing today also. He says, I saw people turning away from the Quran. So then I said, if people are turning away from the Quran, they are not paying attention to the Quran. Rather, وَاشْتَغَلُوا بِفِقْهِ أَبِي حَنِيفَ وَمَغَازِ ibn Ishaq. Okay? They are concentrating on fiqh of Abu Hanifa and the seerah and the history of Ibn Ishaq. Okay? So two things, which again is a problem today also. We concentrate on fiqh and we concentrate on historical issues. Come to Quran, discuss Quranic issues, not there. This was a problem since the 2nd century. Okay? So he says, when I saw this problem, people are turning away from the Quran and they're not reading the Quran, not paying attention to the Quran, they're paying attention to fiqh and history. فَوَضَعْتُ هَذَا الْحَدِيث. So then I fabricated hadith to tell people, Baba, if you recite Quran, this is how much benefit and advantage you will get. Do you notice? It's a pious person doing it, thinking that he's bringing people back to the Quran, but fabricating hadith. And that is why we need to take a strong stance. Okay, not that you make up the end doesn't justify the means. This is not Islam. We are not into Machiavellian politics. Okay, so if you follow up on the Machiavellian politics, you will see that the end justifies the means. You see today what's happening in the world of politics. Everything is being justified for the end goal. So every torture, every kind of understanding, every kind of wrongdoing, it's being justified for the result. No, Islam doesn't justify that. So not everything in the book is to be accepted. That's one example Ayatollah Sistani gives. The other example he gives is from Mahmoud Abu Rayya's book. Okay, Mahmoud Abu Rayya is an interesting personality and is an interesting author. He's a Sunni scholar from Egypt. He writes 2 books and he gets criticized. This is what I was saying, yeah? That once you start criticizing the books of hadith, it reaches a level that, oh, you're crossing the red line, now you're being told, oh, you're not Sunni anymore. Okay, he's faced a lot of backlash because of his 2 books. Okay, one is Adwa ala Sunnat al-Muhammadiyya sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, which Ayatollah Sistani is quoting. The other book is on the critique of Abu Huraira. Okay, and this is another red line within the Sunni theology. You criticize a Sahabi, you are into trouble. Okay, you are not allowed to criticize any Sahabi and any companion. Not at all. Now the name of the book, I will not mention it because Sunnis have really objected to the book, though Abu Rayya himself explains where did he get the title from, okay? But hey, I'll not get into all those discussions. So he has a whole title in his book called Al-Wadda'un As-Salihun. Can you see this? A paradox, okay? These were fabricators but who were pious at the same time. So Ayatollah Sistani goes on further saying, he said, we have a similar title even in the book Al-Ghadir of Allama Amini. Now, the interesting part is here. The whole discussion I brought was for this discussion. He says, وَرُبَّمَا كَانَ فِي الشِّيَعِ أَيْضًا مِنْ جُمَلِ هَذِهِ الْفِكْرَةِ وَيَضَعُ الْحَدِيثِ لِذَلِكَ. So within the Shias also we see this thought process coming up. And they make and fabricate hadith. So كما ورد في بعض من قيل فيه. Okay, so you will see this in the books of hadith, in the books of Rijal. إنه كذاب وضاع أنه كان جعل الحديث في الخيرات. Okay, this paradox is, I don't know how to. He was a liar. So if you go in the books of Rijal, you will see in certain personalities, in certain narrators, he is a liar. He's a fabricator. He fabricates hadith on virtues, okay, on good things, on amr bil ma'ruf. To do good things, he fabricates narrations. Do you get me? Okay? Now, the example Ayatollah Sistani gives is a primary narrator of Kamil al-Ziyarat. And this is where I'm trying to say that. Can you notice, it took so many centuries for a scholar to come and say, look at this. That you have riwayats in Kamil al-Ziyarat from narrators who are questionable. Okay, who are al-Wadda'un as-Salihun. Okay, the pious fabricators. They are fabricating narrations to be able to tell people to go to Ziyarah. But these are questionable and these are problematic narrations according to Ayatollah Sistani. Notice, for mathalan, Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahman al-Asam, and you go search him, you'll see in Kamil al-Ziyarat how many narrations he has. Okay? Ibn Ghadairi says that this person, وَلَهُ كِتَابٌ فِي الزِّيَارَات. Do you see this? He had a book on Mazar literature, on Ziyarah literature. Okay? But يَدُلُّ عَلَى خَبَثٍ عَظِيمٍ. It is khabith. Okay? Now this is the words of Ibn Ghadairi. Okay? It has wrong things into it. وَمَنَاهِجْ مُتَهَافِتْ. He had an incoherent methodology. وَكَانَ مِنْ كَذَّابَةِ أَهْلِ الْبَصْرَةِ. He was a liar from Basra. Najashi goes on further saying, ضَعِيفٌ غَالٍ. Okay, he was not only weak, but he was also a ghali and an extremist. Okay, له كتاب المزار. He had a book on Ziyarah. Okay, so Ayatollah Sistani then concludes. He says, وكتابه هذا من المصادر الأصلية لكامل الزيارات. This is one of the primary sources of Kamil al-Ziyarat. Do you see this? Okay? A narrator who is a ghali, who is a wadda, who is a kadhab, he's becoming the primary source of a book which has now been glorified and sanctified. Okay, we require further research here now. So Ayatollah Sistani has come up, now we require further research here. وَقَدْ نَقَلَ عَنْهُ 30 riwayats. So Ibn Qawlaway has quoted 30 riwayats from Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahman al-Asam. Okay, 30 riwayats in this book have been quoted from this narrator. Okay, وأغلب رواياته طويلة وتتضمن أمورا غريبة. Look at the statements of Ayatollah Sistani. Majority of them have strange issues. He discusses strange things. Okay, sometime inshallah if we get further we can just discuss this narrator. Ayatollah Sistani doesn't stop here. He goes further and quotes another rawi. He says, another rawi, وَمِن مَصَادِرِ كِتَابِ كَامِلِ الزِّيَارَاتِ. Another source of Kamil al-Ziyarat is this rawi and this narrator, Ja'far ibn Muhammad ibn Malik al-Farrazi, or Fazari. Okay? This narrator, Fazari, he's also a problematic narrator. Okay, so Ayatollah Sistani goes on quoting Najashi, who is one of the Rijal scholars in the classical period. He says, كَانَ يَضَعُ الْحَدِيث. Okay, he used to make up hadith. Do you get me? Now he's one of the primary also narrators in within Kamil al-Ziyarat also. He's one of the narrators in within Kamil al-Ziyarat. So Ayatollah Sistani then concludes, he says, let's not only look at the books only, rather compare the books with its author. So you study books together with the author. Is he a ghali, is he an extremist, is he authentic, is he reliable? All these need to be put together and then we come and accept the hadith from this rawi. Okay, so I'll leave it here. Notice Ayatollah Sistani is now questioning the contents of the book also. Okay, and this is what I'm calling for a further research in this area. As I go further, I'll quote some narrations. You will notice they are so strange narrations. These require further research. Okay, this was point number 1 in regards to Kamil al-Ziyarat. Point number 2 in regards to Kamil al-Ziyarat is the whole issue of the manuscript we have today. Okay, so now there's a recent book which has just been released. I don't know if you can see it. Afzud Navisi dar Manabi Hadithi Mutaqaddime Shi'e. So this is a sheikh who I am studying with also. He has written this book. The book is all about the additions in the hadith books. So the theory of this book is this. There's some books of hadith, okay? They have additions in them which were not hadith. I hope you're getting me what I'm trying to talk. Okay? I'm trying to explain, okay? So there were some additions which came into the hadith books, but which were not from the imams. Rather, other reasons are mentioned for those additions. One of those examples is Kamil al-Ziyarat. So on page number, so he has given the example of Kamil al-Ziyarat throughout the book, but he has a whole chapter, okay, which is the last almost chapter, from page number 123 onwards, he discusses the whole issue of Kamil al-Ziyarat. So discussion number 1 which we need to have is the manuscript which we have in our hand today Ibn Qawlaway's manuscript and version, or it was his student's version. As I mentioned earlier, scholars are unanimous that the version of Kamil al-Ziyarat which we have in today is not Ibn Qawlaway's version. It's his student's version. The student's name is Hussein bin Ahmad bin Mughira, either Bushenji or Thallaj. And I'll come and explain because this person is an unknown character, is an unknown narrator, okay? And this is why there's a mix-up as to who is this narrator, okay? Who is this person? So the version and the manuscript we have in today's hand is from him, okay? Point number 1. Now, so the question now comes in, who is this person? Do you get me? Okay? And this is where I'm trying to say there's a need for serious research on this area. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because this person is unknown. The only statement we have about him is from Najashi, the classical Rijal scholar, who comes and says, Kana Iraqiyan, okay, he was an Iraqi, Mudtaribul Madhab or Mudtarabul Madhab, whatever you want to read it as, okay? He had idtirab in his beliefs. He had problems in his beliefs. Okay, now, it's somebody who we are trusting with so much who has problems in his beliefs. Okay? Now, the question which comes in is here. There are two opinions when it comes to Shia hadith. Okay? So, if a hadith is quoted from a non-Shia Imamiyya narrator, scholars have two opinions here. Okay? There are more opinions, but we're sticking to the two opinions. One opinion is from the likes of Sheikh Tusi and those who follow his methodology. They say, no, we can quote from non-Imami narrators as long as they are trustworthy. Okay? So Bushenji is trustworthy according to Najashi. But according to the likes of Allama Hilli and those who follow the school of Hilla, they come and say, no, those who have issues with their madhab, okay, they are not Shia Imamiyya, then they are considered as weak narrators. So for the likes of Allama Hilli and them, this text would be a problem then, okay? Unless you come and say, no, they're not relying on Bushenji, but rather they're relying on the sanad itself, okay? That's a way of explaining it, but Bushenji for them would not be acceptable, okay? And that's why they have considered him as da'if also, as not authentic and not trustworthy. But the interesting part is here now. You know, when it comes to non-Shia Imamiyya narrators, a lot of them we know them, okay? So you have a narrator who is a Waqifi, who belongs to the Waqifiyya, who is a Fathiyya, okay, who belongs to the Fathiyya madhab, or he's a Zaydi, okay, he's another sect, or he's a Sunni also. But we know where they belong to. Strangely, when it comes to Bushenji or Thalaj, when you come to Bushenji, you come and find out that there's no explanation about him in the books of Rijal. Who is he? Which madhab did he belong to? What are the corrupted beliefs he had? Nothing we know. And this is where I'm calling for further research as to we first need to know this man, that who was he? Okay? Can we now build up a whole tall claim from somebody we even don't know much about him? It's just telling me today that I'm going to accept belief from somebody based on one testimony that this person is like this, he's reliable and trustworthy, without further knowing much about him. I don't know, that's what we are doing today. So we have built up a whole Kamil al-Ziyarat based on one testimony of Najashi, which again is not even clear what is meaning out there. Okay, now if you go further, if the statement of Najashi has been taken from Ibn Ghadairi, then becomes another issue, which sometime we can discuss it as those who are aware of it. Okay, so now this is point number 2 in regards to Bushenji. Okay, so and that is why the likes of Allama Behbudi, now when you quote the likes of Allama Behbudi, people will come and tell you, see, he's quoting misguided scholars and all whatnot. This is the problem. What I'm trying to say is, yes, I personally have written 2 papers on Allama Behbudi. I have a lot of difference with Allama Behbudi's opinions. I personally have issues with his opinions. But that doesn't mean we dismiss the person. We don't dismiss every opinion of that person. Okay? He comes and proposes that this book now, and he gives 5-6 reasons. Now, all of those reasons are not as acceptable. Some need research, further research. Some articles are also written on that. So again, some other time, inshallah. What we need is to be able to, he claims that this book of of Kamil al-Ziyarat is not of Ibn Qawlaway. Rather, it's Bushenji's book. From the introduction, you will notice, for example, when he quotes, when he writes, when you go see the introduction, when he says Ibn Qawlaway, he says Rahimahullah. Now, how do you send Rahmah on somebody when I'm the one who's writing? I'm sending Rahmah on myself. And this is where, for example, one of the reasons Behboudi comes and says that no, this book is from his student and not himself. So now, the question comes in is that how many editions has he had in this book? Now, before I come to the whole issue of editions, the other issue which needs to be done about Bushenji is this. How come classical scholars don't narrate from him? If he was a trustworthy narrator, we have only 3 narrations being taken from Sheikh Mufid. Sheikh Mufid only narrates 3 narrations from him. And Sayyid ibn Tawus has a few narrations via another medium from Bushenji. No other classical scholars have quoted from him. How come? This is a question mark. Was he really reliable for them in that period? This is a question mark which requires research, okay? So the final issue which requires research is here, is this whole issue of how many editions of Bushenji are there in this book, okay? So, if you go to this book, okay, this book also has mention of this also on page number, if I can get to the page. Yes, so on page number 54 onwards, he discusses those editions which were done by Bushenji. Okay, so according to this author, at least there are 5 editions which Bushenji himself agrees that he has added into Kamil al-Ziyarat, which Ibn Qawlaway didn't accept them. This is a proper case of what happened with Hadith Kisa also. Now I don't want to get further into this, but Sheikh Abbas Qummi also didn't narrate Hadith Kisa in his Mafatih al-Jinan. After his death, people then quoted it and put it into his book, okay, added it into Mafatih al-Jinan, okay. You can go check it out. So this is a similar example now, that Bushenji now comes and adds 5 narrations at least. Some say 8, some say 10. So the max you can say is 10. He has added 10 narrations into the book Kamil al-Ziyarat, which are not from Ibn Qawlaway. The question comes in is here, and this is where I leave it for research, is this, that how sure are we that other statements where he didn't agree himself, rather he didn't give testimony that he added himself, when you come and see the riwayats which you will quote, are they not his additions? Would you even consider a Shia scholar of the level and caliber of Ibn Qawlaway to come and quote the narrations which we will come and quote as we go further? This is a research required. Okay, I hope you are getting me. This was the third point in regards to the book Kamil al-Ziyarat. The fourth point. What's the ranking of the book? Okay, this is another discussion in hadith. I'm sorry I'm getting into some technical probably discussions, but I'm sure some from some of the feedback I'm getting, alhamdulillah, that some are understanding these discussions. So one of those discussions when it comes to the book of Kamil al-Ziyarat, what's the ranking of this book? Okay, now what do I mean by ranking or grading of this book? Okay, so this is a beautiful book, another book written very recently, مشهورات باعتبار در تاريخ وحديث. Okay, it's written by an author by the name of Mahdi Simai. Now this book has also been approved by the likes of Ayatollah Sheikh Muhammad Hadi Yusuf al-Gharawi also. He writes an approval note also. This is in the end, he has written this book. Okay, notice he says, Dar in athare mu'tabar. This is an authentic, he calls this an authentic book also, meaning he approves of this book. What he does is this author on page number 75, He has quoted a famous hadith scholar in Qom just now. Said Qadim Tabatabai is a renowned hadith scholar and researcher in Qom. What he has done is he has graded hadith. This is a beautiful discussion which needs to be had. Further research needs to be done on this whole issue of the grading of the books of hadith. Okay, so the way the Sunnis have it, they have Sahihain and then they have the Sunans and then they have the other books which follow. They grade them. Even when it comes to practice now, that's another issue. But when you grade these books, it becomes clear where does Kamil al-Ziyarat stand now. So look at the grading he does. So he has used Alif, Be and Jim. I'm not using that. I'm saying A, B and C. There are 3 gradings he has done. Grade A, grade B and grade C. So books which come in grade A are those books which can be independently sourced. Okay, so for example, you refer to Kafi, you don't need to refer to another book to be able to justify what's written in Kafi. Okay, though some would say no, we need it in the Quran also, and that's another discussion. But when it comes to the books of Hadith only, we're grading the books of Hadith. The books in grade A can be independently used as a verification in the verification and authentication process. Okay, so you want to quote a hadith, you quote it from Kafi. Okay, you quote it from Tahdhib. These are books which are in grade A. Do you get me? They can be independently used as a source. Grade B books are those books which cannot be independently used as a source and a reference point. Rather, they can only be used as a mu'ayyad. Rather, they can only be used as a corroborating evidence for something in grade A books. I hope I'm explaining it, okay? So, you have something in grade B book, and you also have it in grade A book. So this now acts as an additional indicator for what is in grade A book. And then the grade C books, so grade A, grade B and grade C books. Grade C books are totally weak sources which cannot be at all used as reference points. Okay? Do you get me? Okay? So now where does Kamil al-Ziyarat fall in? This is what researchers are telling you. Unfortunately, practically we are not seeing this. Notice on page number 79, he comes and says that Kamil al-Ziyarat falls under category B. That means it cannot be independently used as a reference point. Do you get me? You cannot use Kamil al-Ziyarat as an independent reference point. It's a mu'ayyad. It's a just additional indicator for. So we need to find first verifications in grade A books and then come and use Kamil al-Ziyarat, not the opposite the way it's happening today. Okay, that's discussion number 4. We need to go into this direction that the books, inshallah some other time we can show how the gradings have been done, but this is a serious discussion which needs to be had. Where do you grade the books? Okay, how do you rank the books? Okay, this is discussion number 4. I'll leave it till here. The 5th discussion, and I'll go through it very quickly, and this is where I'm more passionate about, is the whole textual analysis of some of the narrations within Kamil al-Ziyarat. You sometimes sit down and question, and this is where the whole discussion number 3 comes in of the author. Is it Ibn Qawlaway or is it Bushenji? When you come and look at these narrations, you come and question that really Ibn Qawlaway accepted these narrations as reliable narrations? I don't know. Okay, look at these narrations. We already had Ayatollah Sistani question 30 narrations from Abdullah bin Asam. Okay, so 30 question marks already there. You have now these narrations going further now. Look at the amount of narrations. There's a whole category of narrations in Kamil al-Ziyarat which consider Karbala better than Kaaba. This is somebody. Now these are all questions related theologically, okay? We Shias, do we really believe Karbala is better than Kaaba? I leave it on you as theologically, do you really believe that Karbala is better than Kaaba? I don't know. I leave it upon you to go and tell me that. Now, if you really believe what's written in Kamil al-Ziyarat is authentic, then allow the polemics in the Sunni world to come and then claim that, oh, Shias are now considering Kaaba to be Karbala and not the Kaaba of Makkah. It's coming from these kind of narrations. Look at the kind of narrations. Wallahi, I don't know how did they enter these narrations. So, look at the riwayah. Okay? So, if you have the English Kamil al-Ziyarat, also you can refer to it. Page number 389. Okay? Hadith number 2. And I'm quoting verbatim so that I'll not put any footnotes on that. Okay? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam narrates, the land of Kaaba once said, who is there like me? For Allah built his house upon me. So Kaaba is as if it's bragging, it's being proud. These are the words of riwayah. Okay, it's being proud that nobody is better than me. So Allah replied to Kaaba now. He says, refrain from speaking. I'm using the words of the translator, okay? I swear by my glory and by magnificence that your honor compared to the honor that I bestowed upon the land of Karbala. Now, can Imam say such things? I don't know. Your comparison with Karbala is what? He's saying is like a drop of water upon a needle that was dipped into the sea. Yani Imam can make such statements for Kaaba? A'udhu billah, yani wallahi, this we cannot accept it even theologically. That's Baytullah, okay, on one side. We have a lot of respect and honor for Karbala, but you can't compare it to Baytullah. Okay, the house of God is somewhere else. Okay, so, and then your Imam goes and says, a drop of water on top of a needle, what is it the worth? Nothing. And then inside a sea, in an ocean, useless altogether. It's not seen altogether. Can Imam make such statements? I don't know. Imam doesn't stop here, apparently. He says, if it were not for the dust of Karbala, I would have not honored you. That means the honor of Karbala, the honor of Kaaba is coming from Karbala and not vice versa. Okay? And then, if it were not for that which is buried within the land of Karbala, I would have not even created you. Allahu Akbar. Okay? Nor would I have created the house about which you have boasted. Now compose yourself and be humble in front of Karbala. Sorry. Okay? As I said, I'm not putting any footnotes. I'm just asking, are these riwayats really theologically compatible with our theology? I don't know. I personally feel lots of issues. Hadith number 3 in the same chapter. The fifth Imam alayhi salam says, Allah created, blessed and made pure the land of Kaaba 24,000 years before He created Kaaba. The purity and the blessedness of Karbala came 24,000 years before Kaaba. Okay? It was blessed and purified before the creation of any created being. And it will remain this way until Allah ascends it unto heavens and appoints it as the best of lands in Jannah. So the best land in Jannah is what? Karbala. Okay? This is hadith number 3. Okay, you refer to the translation, you will see this. As I said in page number 389. Okay? So, in hadith number 4, it goes on saying that it will be placed amongst the best of gardens and dwellings in Jannah. None except the prophets and the messengers from the Ulul Azm shall dwell in it, okay? Within it. So, it's a place so high that only the prophets and Ulul Azm prophets will stay within the land of Karbala in Jannah, okay? This is hadith number 4. Hadith number 5, okay? It is the most honorable land. This is again 5th Imam saying, it's the most honorable land with Allah, and if it had not existed, there would be no place for Allah to entrust within the body, to entrust with the bodies of His Hujjah and His prophets. That means if Karbala was not there, then Allah would have found no place to put His chosen ones. I don't know. Theologically, I don't know. This is hadith number 5. Hadith number 12 similar. Hadith number 14, also similar. Again, look at the hadith. Safwan narrates from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that Allah elevated some lands and some bodies of water over others. So some transgressed and were punished for not being humbled before Allah. Kaaba was punished. I don't know, theologically, I don't know. Okay? So therefore Allah empowered the mushriks over the land of Kaaba and made the water of Zamzam become salty. That means because Kaaba became proud, according to hadith number 2, Kaaba became proud, Allah punished Kaaba. It made the mushriks dwell and stay in Kaaba, in Mecca, and it made the water of Zamzam salty. Now, is it salty? I don't know. I don't know how do we prove this hadith. Okay? But, however, the land of Karbala and the water of river Furat were the first land and water that glorified Allah. Therefore, Allah blessed them. Okay? I'm not commenting on these narrations. Okay? I'm leaving it upon you as a reader to come and judge yourselves. This was a set of narrations. Another set of narrations we have is those narrations which say Allah looks at the Zawar of Karbala before He looks at the Zawar of and those who go for Hajj on Arafah. Again, I'm questioning theologically, is it compatible? One is wajib, one is mustahab. We are not talking about those mustahab Hajjs, okay? The riwayats are very clear, okay? They're not talking, there's no clarity. A lot of people go for Hajj wajib. So now, is the riwayah making the distinction that those who go for Hajj wajib, no, Allah looks at them first and then Zuwar of Karbala? No, the riwayats don't make the distinction. The riwayats are absolute, they're general, okay? That means that Allah looks at Zuwar of Karbala first and then He looks at Kaaba. So look at the riwayah, okay? So on page number 239 in the English version, if you want to refer to, hadith number 3. إن الله تبارك وتعالى يبدأ بالنظر إلى زوار قبر الحسين عليه السلام. Allah starts to look at on the eve of Arafah. This is very important. That is wajib. This is mustahab. Okay? Allah looks at the zuwar and the visitors of Karbala before He looks at the people in Kaaba and in the visitors who have gone to Arafah. So the Rawi even gets surprised. He's like, even before looking at the people who are in Arafah also? So okay, those people who are not in Arafah, okay. But those people who are in Arafah doing a wajib hajj, even them, Allah doesn't look at them and looks at the people and the zuwar of Karbala? Imam says, yes. Now the reasoning Imam gives, I don't know. How do we ascribe such wordings to Imam? I don't know. Okay, these are the wordings of the riwayats, okay? Let me read you the Arabic. So he asks, how is it possible that one is wajib, one is mustahab, Allah is looking on this side and not looking on this side? He says, لِأَنَّ فِي أُولَٰئِكَ أَوْلَادُ زِنًا. Okay? وَلَيْسَ فِي هَؤُلَاءِ أَوْلَادُ زِنًا. Okay? I don't know, wallahi, you get surprised. How did these narrations get into these books as reliable narrations, okay? So, Imam tells the Rawi that, you know what? Those who go to Hajj, they are illegitimate children. These are the wordings of the riwayah, okay? I'm not putting my own, that thing. Look at the translator. He says, because those who are awlad zani, children of adultery and illegitimate, amongst those who are in Arafah. So those who go to Arafah, they are those who are awlad zina. They are illegitimate also, who are born out of wedlock. But when you come to Karbala, there are no illegitimate children. Now that's opposite to what's happening. Okay, you also have awlad zina in Karbala also. But this is what the Imam mentions. This is hadith number 3. Hadith number 4. On the day of Arafah, He fulfills their needs and forgives their sins, the people of Karbala, and accepts the shifa'ah, intercession. Afterwards, He attends to the people in Arafah and blesses them in the same way. Okay? Now, are these riwayats theologically compatible with our theology? These are question marks which need to be checked. Okay? On the day of Arafah, hadith number 7. On the day of Arafah, people will be told who are going to Karbala, go forward and only do good deeds, for I have forgiven you. Then he looks towards people in Arafah. Okay? Now, strangely, we have contradictory narrations also about Arafah. Strangely. Now, scholars need to come and sort these contradictions also. Imams are saying don't go for ziyarah on Arafah because Allah will reward on non-Arafah. Okay? So notice, أيما مؤمن زار الحسين عليه السلام عارفا بحقه في غير عيد ولا عرفة. Okay? So, a believer who visits Karbala on the day, apart from the day of Eid and apart from the day of Arafah, then Allah will reward him. Okay? Do you see the contradiction now? Okay? Now Imam is like saying that the reward will come when you don't visit on the day of Arafah. Okay? This is on page number 259 if you want to check in the English version. Okay? This is a second set of ahadith. A third set of narrations are those which say that Allah appears in a physical form. Now, is it compatible with our theology that Allah has a physical form? Okay, if yes, then how do we blame the Wahhabis and the Salafis? Why are we blaming them when we have these riwayats also? Okay, in the English version, page number 89, you can refer to this. Okay, so Imam Sadiq alayhi salam narrates this, that a day came that the Holy Prophet was visiting the house of his daughter, Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. Imam Hussein was sitting on his lap. Okay. And suddenly the Holy Prophet started crying and weeping and fell into prostration. And then he turned to his daughter and says, "O Fatima, Allah just appeared before me in the most beautiful form in your house." Look at the Arabic wordings, okay? إن العلي الأعلى تراءى لي في بيتك هذا في الساعة هذه في أحسن صورة وأهيئ هيئة. Okay? Allah showed himself to me in your house at this moment in the best of forms and in the best of forms. Okay? Then it goes further. It doesn't stop there. Okay, so then he says, فَقَالَ لِي يَا Muhammad. Allah then turns back to me and starts talking to me. This Holy Prophet narrating it to Bibi Fatima. He says, وَوَضَعَ يَدَهُ عَلَى رَأْسِ الْحُسَيْنِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ. Allah kept his hand on top of the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Now, do we accept these narrations theologically? These are questions. I leave them for you. Okay, this is third set of narrations. A fourth set of narrations which are again theologically very problematic, okay, are those set of narrations where the Holy Prophet doesn't accept the birth of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Bibi Fatima alayhi salam doesn't accept the birth of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And then she then denies to even feed him. And then the Holy Prophet has to feed him. Do you get me? This is where it has gone. Now these riwayats are all there in Kamil al-Ziyarah, okay? So, now strangely, when you come to the English version of these riwayats, the translator has omitted all the 5 narrations. There are 5 such narrations. The translator has omitted all of them. Okay, so I'm giving you the Arabic reference now. Okay, so that you have that reference. Kamil al-Ziyarat, page number 55, the Arabic version. Okay, so let me read you one riwayah, otherwise there are 5 such narrations. Okay, Jibreel comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "Ya Muhammad, ala ubashiruka bi ghulamin. Should I not give you glad tidings of a child who will be killed after you?" Now look at the riwayah. Okay, the riwayah says, "Faqala la hajata li fihi." I don't need this child. This is a prophet saying such things. So Jibreel then turns back to the heavens and then comes back. The second time he does the same. He tells the Prophet, and the Prophet says, La hajata li fihi. I don't want this child. So he goes back to the heavens. The third time he comes back, he tells the Prophet says, I don't need this child. Until then, Ibrahim has to tell Holy Prophet that, Inna rabbaka ja'ilul wasiyya fi aqibihi. You know, successorship and imama has been kept in his loins and in his ancestry. So all the children and all the imams will come from the loin of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This is where now the Holy Prophet accepts this birth. So then he goes to Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. He tells, now the Holy Prophet is telling Bibi Fatima the same things. She also rejects it. Okay? فَدَخَلَ عَلَى فَاطِمَةَ. He enters this and he tells her the same. فَقَالَتْ لَا حَاجَةَ لِي فِي. I don't want this child. So then the Holy Prophet has to explain then that, oh no, successorship will be here in this boy's loins and ancestry. And then she accepts him. But still, she doesn't breastfeed him. She doesn't feed him. How does it feed? It says, فَيَضَعُ. So the Holy Prophet, فَيَضَعُ إِبْهَامَهُ فِي فِيعِهِ. Okay? The Holy Prophet came and kept his thumb in his mouth and he started feeding with it. And that's how Imam Hussein grew. Now, are these theologically compatible with our theology? That a person at the caliber of the Prophet comes and denies what Allah has decreed for him? I don't know. Bibi Fatima alayhi salam denying it. These are discussions which need to be had. Okay, we need to research further into this. Another set of riwayah where Imam Baqir alayhi salam calls Hisham bin Abdul Malik Amirul Mu'mineen. So Imam calling the Khalifa, the Marwani Khalifa who is an oppressor, he calls him Amirul Mu'mineen. Do we accept these narrations? I don't know. I'm leaving it upon you as a person to say. And then he comes and tells him that if you ask me a question, if I don't know, I will tell you I don't know. So look at the statement, okay? Again, the translator has not translated it the way it is, okay? So I'm reading the way it's in Arabic. فَقَالَ أَبِي. So Hisham ibn Abdul Malik calls Imam Baqir alayhi salam. This is Imam Sadiq narrating. He calls Imam Baqir alayhi salam and he starts asking him questions. So فَقَالَ أَبِي. The sixth Imam is saying, my father told Hisham that لِيَسْأَلَنِي أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَمَّا أَحَبْ. So Amirul Mu'mineen, whatever he wants to question me, whatever he wants to ask me, he can ask me. That is issue number one. Issue number two, Imam is saying, فَإِنْ عَلِمْتُ أَجَبْتُ ذَلِكَ. If I know about it, I will answer. وَإِنْ لَمْ أَعْلَمْ قُلْتُ لَا أَدْرِي. But if I don't know about it, then I'll tell you I don't know about it. Now, if we accept these riwayats, where do the whole issue of ilmul ghayb and ilmul imam and the knowledge of imam goes? We need to sort these narrations now. Okay? Then Imam goes on further with saying, وَكَانَ الصِّدْقُ أَوْلَى بِي. Okay? So if I don't know, I will tell you I don't know, because truth is better than falsehood. I deserve to be speaking the truth. This is another riwayah this is in chapter number 24. So it's there even in the English version also on page number 102 with a slight issue in the translation. Okay? And finally, I'm sorry I took a lot of time today, but I felt these are necessary discussions. Riwayats of the tragedy of Karbala, and especially those narrations which are talking of tragedy after Karbala. Okay? So when you come and put these narrations with our theology, can we put them together or not? That's a question mark. Okay? So there's a beautiful article again in Persian. Riwayat Ashuraiye Kamil al-Ziyarah dar Bute Naqd. Okay, so they're criticizing the narrations which are related to Ashura and after Ashura, post Ashura in Kamil al-Ziyarah, and they're critiquing these narrators. What I'm interested in is the conclusion of these authors, okay? So notice, I'm reading the Persian. I'm sorry, today really I took up a lot of time. بیشتر این روایات به شخصیت‌های سنی باز می‌گردد. A lot of these riwayats are turning back to the Sunni narrators. Now, as I mentioned before also, we don't have issues taking riwayats from Sunni narrators. The issue is when you take problematic narrations from Sunni narrators and then bring it on this side. Why do you want to bring the problem from that side to this side? Okay, that's the question we are asking. Okay, so از راویان شیعی تنها گریستن و خونین شدن آسمان مطرح شده. So all the supernatural events. So you notice all the post-Karbala narratives and the narrations talk about the supernatural events. Okay, I don't know, blood came out here and blood came out there, and something happened here and something happened there. This is what the discussion is all about. A lot of these riwayats are going back to Sunni narrators. Now, the authors go on further mentioning why Sunnis would mention this, okay? So, this go back to all Sunni narrators. The Shia narrators have only narrated the weeping and the becoming bloody of the heavens. That's all. And that also, تمامی آنها جز یکی ضعیف به شمار میاد. Majority of them are ضعیف, except one. Do you get me? Okay? And this is where a research is required. All these narrations of supernatural events which are being mentioned, especially post-Karbala, okay? The question comes in, where was it happening? Who was noticing all this? If it was happening in the public, how come the whole public doesn't view it? Only few people, only one person sees it. Now, I don't want to get into that discussions. Academically, look at what they are saying now, okay? Look at all the narrators. It says کسانی که در طبقه اول قرار دارند و در طبقه بقیه طبقات شامی هستند. The big problem is this, that majority of the narrators who are Sunni are from Sham. And you know that Sham was the hub of Muawiyah and the Bani Umayyads. What will they say about the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? Okay? Now, some people would come and use the formula that, oh, if the enemy narrates fada'il and merits, then it's acceptable. But this is not a merit. Okay? This is not a merit. Wallahi. As we go further, we'll mention this is not a merit. This is spoiling the image of Shiism by making them look as people who are superstitious and who are after supernatural events. Okay? So, majority of the narrators are Shami. And you cannot accept narrations from the Shamis and Bani Umayyads. Okay? And از این رو بیشتر حوادث غیر عادی در شام و بیت المقدس گزارش شده. And that's why majority of the supernatural events which took place after Karbala have happened in Damascus and have happened in the Palestine area. How come? Why are you not somewhere else? Okay? This is one point they make. Another point they make is this, that look at who have concentrated on these riwayats. You come and then make up that these riwayats require further research. Those who have concentrated and have paid attention to these from the Sunni narrators are Ibn Sa'd wa Ibn Asakir. And those of you who study history would know Ibn Sa'd and Ibn Asakir, okay? You would come and realize that why have they concentrated on? When you come to Ibn Sa'd, the tragedy of Karbala, he doesn't mention it with the details, but rather when it comes to post-tragedy and all these supernatural events, he focuses in and he magnifies those narrations. Okay, this is a question mark. Why so? Okay, the same author doesn't narrate narrations regarding the tragedy the way Tabari narrates. And then you come and see him focusing more on supernatural events which took place after. Okay? Or another point which the authors make is their Mayane Manabi Ahl Sunnat. So those from the Ahl Sunnat, we mentioned Ibn Sa'd, Ibn Asakir, he mentions one more source is Mu'jam Tabarani. These are the three sources which have concentrated and given a lot of attention to these kind of riwayats. Notice he says, they say that اما طبری تحدی بلادوری که روش روایتگریشان متفاوت با دیگر مورخان یا محدثان است کمترین روایت را نقل کرده اند. How come Tabari, who is also who has a lot of problematic riwayas in his tarikh, okay? he has not concentrated on these kind of narrations. Baladhuri also to some extent. How come only Ibn Sa'ad and Ibn Asakir have focused on those kind of narrations? Now, the point I brought all these discussions is here. He says در میان شیعه نیز کامل الزیارات و کتب قرن دهم به بعد. Okay, so when you come and see these supernatural events in the Shia literature, it's Kamil al-Ziyarat which is concentrated and paid attention to these kind of riwayats, not others. So the likes of Sheikh Kulaini and Sheikh Tusi, they've not narrated all these narrations. But Kamil al-Ziyarat has narrated this. And then after that, there's a period of absence till you come to the Akhbari period, the 10th century onwards. There where you see again this influx of all these supernatural events which are being mentioned. Okay, so he says, Amma al-Irshad Sheikh Mufid tanha kitab mutaqaddim bi in riwayat i'tinai nakarde. Sheikh Mufid has not even paid attention to these riwayats and these discussions. I'm sorry, today I really took a lot of time, but I hope you get the point I'm trying to make. In conclusion, the point I was trying to make is this. The first point I made is that the Ziyarah and the Mazar literature in general needs a re-evaluation, reassessment. And I gave one example which we discussed. And then which we went on discussing the whole issue of Kamil al-Ziyarat, okay? Especially we went on focusing on the narrators, which Ayatollah Sistani focused on. Rather, he came and questioned the content also of the book itself also. And then we went on discussing other issues, which one of the main discussions was the textual analysis which is required. And then we come up with a final conclusion that, okay, what percentage of riwayats in Kamil al-Ziyarat is acceptable with our theology, with other references and other proofs also, okay? Let's pray to Allah to give us the tawfiq again, to be able to understand His religion in the way He wants us to understand. And inshallah, be able to put that into practice. And Allah help all the madhlumeen and all the oppressed throughout the world, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.